Redditors who have objected at weddings or seen someone object, what happened in the next 5 minutes. Story 1. My best friend calls me up out of the blue one day and asks me if I can travel the upcoming weekend to his place from Phoenix to the mountains of northern Arizona. He says he finally popped the question to his girlfriend of 5 years and mother of his 2 kids. They're just going to have a small impromptu get-together of friends and family to seal the deal. So I drove 3 hours and showed up to his huge family on his lawn, and she was not in sight. I find him, and he's trying to hide the fact that he's freaking shook up. Dig a little deeper and find out he hasn't seen the bride in 2 days, and he thinks she's not going to show. She's not coming, were his exact words. I calm him down with a couple shots of Patron and assure him she wants to make a dramatic entrance. She never shows. Bride's mother shows up finally and tells my buddy, in private, that she took off to Phoenix and has been at an ex's for the last couple days. He announces wedding's off to the 30 or so people there, and being the awesome Mexican family they are, we all eat and party and piñata the heck out of the rest of the night anyway, and blame cold feet. She doesn't come back for 2 months, leaves him with his painting business and the kids to take care of. Then he calls me up and says it's back on. She needed to get some crap out of her system. Objection, made by yours truly. I couldn't be there, so I just talked crap to her relentlessly online. Anytime she posted anything, there I was, reminding her that she's the biggest crap-filled human on earth for doing that to the best guy I know. They did get married, and she eventually blocked me. Their marriage lasted about 4 more months. I still have dreams about throat-punching her and having the jury say at my assault trial, "Not guilty, she had it coming." Seriously though, violence against ladies is bad. Any violence against anyone for that matter. But damn, it would have felt good. Stay in school. Don't biff the half-pipe, kids. Aw, it's sad that they still got married, but man, you're an awesome friend, and you saw that coming a mile away. If I was part of the jury in your dream, I would have asked you to do it again. Story 2. Not really an objection, but a friend of mine works at a wedding venue. She told me about one wedding where the best man made some jokes in his speech about the time that he slept with the bride. He assumed that the groom already knew about it. He didn't. Groom was not happy. The reception ended up getting canceled and all the guests were sent home. Rules of the best man toast. Insult yourself, insult the groom lightly, compliment the bride, compliment the groom, insult yourself. Keep it short and shut up. Story 3. Lots of laughs. My friend's older brother is a lawyer. He was marrying a lawyer. Most of their friends are lawyers. The officiant was a judge who was a friend of theirs. He and his fiancée thought it would be funny to plant someone in the audience. They got a friend to yell, "I object," to which the judge yelled, "Overruled." It seemed to have gone over well for most, but I don't think some of their family members got it. I am dying to see the wedding video of it, not the crappy cell phone version. Story 4. This happened at one of my friend's siblings' weddings. Her parents are super conservative and hadn't gotten the chance to know the daughter's fiancé very well before they got married. In their minds, all that was relevant about him was that he was 10 years older than her and had been previously divorced. They had made subtle and not so subtle comments here and there before the wedding that they weren't happy about it. It should have been a forewarning of what was to come. The day of the wedding, everything was beautiful. Friend's sister and her fiancé were ecstatic to be getting married and invited friends and family from both sides to their outdoor wedding. All was going well. Until the preacher asks the audience if anyone has objections to why they should get married. And as serious as can be, the dad of the bride stands up and says, "Her mother and I object." And then after a long hesitation sits back down. Silence. No one can believe that just happened. Not knowing exactly how to handle it, the preacher just says, "Okay," and finishes the ceremony as planned. I can't even imagine how the bride and groom must have felt. My friend says the tension in the room was unbelievable, but they got married all the same. They just do a lot of avoiding the in-laws, as one might imagine. The second-hand embarrassment for the mother, man. I lost it at the, okay, part. Story 5. Oh God, this reminds me of a close friend of mine's wedding. Known this dude for years. We'll call him Ray. He met a girl we'll call Katie. She already had a daughter. Cool, right? Was never married to the other dude, just didn't click. Very amicable separation. Shared custody of the child, no fighting, no demand for child support. Very worldly perfect. Katie was pretty cool. Got along with our friend group pretty well. Soon enough, the old boyfriend she had her daughter with becomes best friends with Ray. A couple years go by and Ray and Katie decide to get married. And around this time, he confided in me, his best friend. He said the daughter's father, I'll name Jeff, made references to this girl. And there was some vague evidence of it not being as amicable a separation as it seemed. Jeff was pretty quiet about his life and talked about girls pretty often. But we learned later he had actually been holding out for Katie all that time. So assuming Jeff was his best friend, Ray makes him one of the groomsmen along with myself at the wedding. Keeps telling Ray about how great Katie is. Not to choke, I'm here for you, etc. Ray told him to stop because he was psyching him out. So when the song and dance is happening and the ceremony is about to begin, finally, I met up with my significant other at our table. Katie and Jeff's daughter is playing on the dance floor. Suddenly, the music stops. The DJ says this song is from Jeff to Katie and says he still loves her, that it should be him. Cue It Could Have Been Me by Billy Ray Cyrus blasting all over the hall. Then, Jeff goes up and gets on one knee and asks Katie to dance with him and be his wife. She slaps him. Ray loses his crap and gets in a fight. Cops get called. Wedding ruined. I nope the heck back to the hotel with my partner and let them all figure it out on their own. They're divorced now. Ray, my man, you should have knocked the DJ out too. I could imagine all the action happening to It Could Have Been Me by Billy Ray Cyrus. It must have been a sight.
Hey, guess what? Our team just introduced Rufus rugs. Premium, custom, hand-tufted rugs. Imagine having your own unique rug that perfectly reflects your style. Whether you're a dedicated Naruto fan or simply adore Pokemon and can't resist displaying bus toys, we can turn your dreams into reality. We can create almost anything you want. Don't wait. Dive deeper into the world of Rufus rugs by clicking the first link in the description.
Story 6. It happened at my wedding. Sort of. My middle brother has a very odd sense of humor that occasionally causes issues. One of those issues is that he likes to whip his out at random times and see how long it takes people to notice. The night before the wedding, he told me that at some point during the ceremony, he was going to cough loudly, and that would mean his sack was out. I laughed it off. Our officiant got to the speak now or forever hold your peace bit, and I heard a cough from where my brother was sitting. Both my husband and I whipped around in disbelief, but the audience thought we were daring any of them to say something, I guess, so they all laughed. Little did they know what was actually going down in the crowd. Story 7. While I haven't been an official guest at a dramatic wedding, I did have the chance to witness one. I've told this story before, but given that it's the only such wedding I've ever seen, I'll offer it again. At the time, I was selling my services as a videographer, and I had been booked to shoot a choral performance at a local church. Although I had an assistant to help me with my second camera, I always made a point of setting things up on my own, and so I did my best to arrive at least an hour and a half before I was scheduled to start filming. On the day in question, I discovered that the church had been previously reserved for a wedding party, and so I had little choice but to wait for the service to finish. It seemed like a fairly generic ceremony. Awkwardly played organ music signaled the entrance of the procession, and as everyone took their places near the altar, things appeared to be going according to plan. Then, the time came for the bride to make her appearance. The doors opened, and there she was, smiling radiantly as she shuffled up the aisle. She was a large, in both the tall and broad senses, woman who could have been anywhere from 25 to 45, and I found myself wondering why she wasn't being accompanied by anyone. Perhaps, I reasoned, she simply didn't have a father, or maybe she had decided to do away with that particular tradition. The truth, as it turned out, was a little bit less benign. As the priest began a speech, that same dearly beloved bit that you see in the movies, a man stood up in the audience. "You still have time!" he shouted, and although he was quickly shushed by the woman next to him, his words seemed to have an effect. The groom, a small, frail-looking man with a ponytail, meekly held up a hand. The priest stopped talking, and though I couldn't see the bride's face, I could hear her angrily hissing something to her husband-to-be. "Excuse me," the man said. He paused, growing bright red. After a moment, he continued. "I'm sorry," he said. He murmured something to the woman in white, offered a few words to the best man, and then promptly fainted. Now, at first, I figured that the groom had suffered some sort of medical event and that the wedding would continue. My assumption was quickly proven false as the best man literally picked up his friend and strutted down the aisle, saying not a word to anybody. Throughout the entire scene, everyone was completely silent, until at last the bride found her voice. "I hate you all!" she shrieked. She stormed away from the altar and nobody followed her, not even a bridesmaid. For a few seconds, everyone sat in shock, until the man from before stood up again. "I'm sorry for wasting everyone's time," he said. "You're all still welcome to come to the reception." The crowd started to clear out after that, with everyone whispering to each other. From what I was able to figure out, it seemed like the bride had more or less bullied the groom to the idea of marriage as a means of curing his homosexuality. The man who had spoken up was actually the bride's father, which didn't bode well for their next family gathering. I even overheard a few attendees claim that the groom wasn't actually gay, but that he'd claimed to be when he had tried to break up with his domineering girlfriend. All in all, it was rather like being caught in the middle of a soap opera's finale. You can imagine how hard I mentally kicked myself when I realized that he could have filmed it. What a twist. What if the best man was actually his boyfriend? It's fine if you didn't get to film it. Now you have an idea for a dramatic film. Story 8. Had a friend object at my first wedding. He came right up to the altar, spouting off about all my shortcomings. Myself and my groomsmen all leveled our guns at him, but he just wouldn't shut up. So we fired. He lay in a heap on the ground for the rest of the ceremony. Mind you, this was all planned. It was a pirate Renaissance wedding and the guns were black powder. Sans the shot, of course. We all played our parts a bit too well, though. A few of the more gullible guests thought there'd been a legit murder at the wedding at first. It was awesome. Then we had a second wedding that was purely traditional, except that, being an outdoor wedding, we knew that a traditional unity candle wouldn't cut it. Those things never stay lit. Our solution? We brought a cannon in and held the linstock together to touch it off. I don't have a picture or video of the Objection handy, but I think she still has a MySpace page with the traditional wedding pics. If I can find the cannon pic, I will deliver. Dude, that is awesome. Props to the dude laying on the ground for the rest of the ceremony. If you don't want to end up like that dude, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Now back to the video. Story 9. I wasn't born yet, but it is a funny family story. I have a very large extended family. Mom has 6 brothers and 3 sisters. When Uncle C, the 4th son, got married, it was fairly obvious that most of his siblings didn't care for his wife-to-be. The day before the wedding, Uncle C got hurt at work, messed up his hand and needed a lot of stitches. He was given very strong painkillers. During the ceremony, Uncle C was on painkillers and started to feel lightheaded. Well, in the middle of saying their vows, he began to wander off stage, and my Uncle L stood up and began cheering. Uncle L then shouted, "Attaboy, C!" L's wife pulled him back into the pew and shushed him. Later in the ceremony, Uncle C and his wife were kneeling in the church doing some prayer. As Uncle C was facing away from the guests, everyone could see the bottoms of his shoes. One of my uncles had painted "Help Me" in the soles of his dress shoes. That's hilarious. I'm 100% sure it was Uncle L who painted that. Story 10. My grandfather humorously objected to my parents marrying, despite having given them his blessing. He held up a photo of my dad with 2 black eyes, a bleeding cheek, and a muddy face in a varsity rugby game, and asked the wedding crowd, "Would you let this man marry your daughter?" Everyone laughed and said no. Years later, us kids still hear the story at family gatherings. 20 years on, when my granddad moved, Dad mailed the new neighbor photos of my 70-year-old grandfather with pink-dyed hair with the caption, "Would you let this man live in your neighborhood?" We didn't find out till weeks later, and that's how I learned that revenge is a dish best served cold. It's not quite 5 minutes after the objection, but oh well. Story 11. Some friends of mine got married. It was a second marriage for both of them, and they had kids, 2 of hers and 3 of his, all high school age or older. The kids had all known each other for quite a while by that time and were good friends. The wedding was very informal and was held outdoors in a park. I think the officiant was an old friend also. When it got to "speak now or forever hold your peace," the kids all got up and presented a list of demands. They wouldn't approve the marriage, they said, unless the demands were met. This was all a joke, of course. I'm sure the officiant was in on it, and so were some other members of the wedding party, but it came as a total surprise to the bride and groom, who took it with good humor. I can't remember the specific demands. There were things like, Dad was not allowed to tell dad jokes. Mom was required to cook waffles for breakfast every Sunday. Probably some of them were inside jokes that I didn't understand. Eventually, the parents agreed to the demands, and the wedding proceeded. I wasn't there, but I saw the video. Story 12. I officiated a wedding where the groom's best man was a work associate. At the reception, they were doing toasts, and the best man got up and told stories about how he thought the groom was really gay. I think he thought it would be hilarious, but no one thought it funny, especially the bride. When he was done, the bride's dad stood up and said, "Patrick needs a new best man. Any takers?" Folks avoided the guy like the plague for the rest of the night. That's insane. Another action-packed fight scene while It Could Have Been Me by Billy Ray Cyrus was playing. Story 13. When I married my dear husband, one of my closest friends was in seminary. I asked her to stand up for me and bless her marriage during the ceremony. Although I am not particularly religious, my husband is, and I thought it would be meaningful for my dear friend to lend her blessing to our marriage. She acted thrilled to do so and did a lovely job at the ceremony. Then at the reception, she cornered my new husband and scolded him for marrying me, telling him that since he's a Christian and I'm not, we were unequally yoked and in the eyes of the Lord should not have been married. She then informed him that it was his job as the head of the family to bring me to Christ. I happened to walk up to them just as she finished admonishing him. He was sheet white, but I didn't learn the full extent of the conversation until later. I ended the friendship, obviously, at which point she tried giving me one of those, "I'm sorry if you were offended" apologies. I don't miss her. Story 14. My now father-in-law was at our wedding party when I married my wife. It was an outdoor wedding in August, slightly hot, but it was a quick ceremony. When the officiate asked this question, my wife's father started backpedaling really quick and fell over. He's sort of a jokester, so everyone was like, "What the hell, man?" And my wife was pissed. It took a moment to set in, but he actually passed out. Turns out he locked his knees and with a heat just passed out. In our wedding photo where we start the procession out after being married, you can actually see his feet in the background where EMTs had him on the ground making sure he was okay. I'm not sure if I should laugh or be worried. Dad jokes. Eventually, they have a backfire every once in a while. Story 15. I was a waiter for a venue that had a lot of weddings. We typically watched the wedding ourselves from the second floor and waited for everyone to come up for the reception. A guest for the wedding arrived a few hours early, so he sat in the restaurant and had a few too many drinks. He yelled, "Don't freaking do it!" Insert bride's name. "He's an a-hole." There was a typical gasp by the crowd, then it was just silence, as people from the bar, not part of the wedding but the bar was outside on the same floor, escorted him out. I really wanted to know what happened. Story 16. I was tempted to speak up, as I knew the bride wasn't really that into the groom. It was a weird Baptist, semi-arranged marriage thing. Needless to say, the bride was a bit of a wild child, so I didn't see a marriage to a minister lasting. I said nothing though, and made an excuse to leave in a hurry. Anyway, the wheels started to come off during the honeymoon, and she ended up sleeping with his brother, who was the black sheep of the family, and who had only returned for the wedding. Cool guy. They ended up having a kid together. Story 17. My best friend was really worried about this at her wedding. Her grandmother is an old racist, and the groom was, and still is, Latino. Friend was terrified that her grandmother was going to object because their babies would be mixed, so they held the wedding during foaling season, knowing Nana would never leave her horses to come. But the preacher told us that if anyone objected, he would take them to another room to hear the objection and then return to finish the ceremony. Or not, I guess. Who wouldn't like Latino people? They're awesome. Shout out to my Latino viewers. Story 18. The last wedding video I made, outdoor wedding facing a big valley. On the other side of the valley is a big radio tower. Just as the preacher says, "Does anyone?" a big bolt of lightning hits the tower. I'm the only one who really saw it, as I'm the only one not paying attention to the ceremony. During the vows, I leave the camera alone. Just as I wondered, how long is the sound going to take to get here? The preacher gets to, "Forever keep your peace." And then, kerblam, the whole place shakes with thunder. Long pause, and then the preacher says, "Well, that's never happened before." I asked if they wanted that to stay in the video, and they did. It's been almost 10 years now, and as far as I know, they're still married. Story 19. I saw it. My girlfriend was one of the bridesmaids and gave me the contacts later on. Former boyfriend of the bride sneaked into the ceremony drunk. He was obsessed with her, and their relationship had been really, really bad. Most people at the wedding knew him and knew how he manipulated and controlled her. From what I heard, he was a type A crapbag. When the pastor finally got to, "Speak now or forever hold your peace," he stood up and yelled, "I object." Both the bride's and groom's fathers stood up and started making their way back towards the pew the guy was in. He went stumbling out of the hall with both of the fathers in pursuit. That night at the party, when both fathers got up to give their speeches, their knuckles were visibly messed up. Story 20. I nearly did this once. A friend chose to marry someone who I knew they shouldn't have, and even his family knew. But the idea that you have to forge your own path and make your own mistakes was ultimately what kept me quiet, and I guess the family. It didn't work out, and they divorced less than a couple of years later. If you have had the guts to object at a wedding and potentially friendships, then you are braver than I am, so kudos. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like this, make sure to check out Those Who Have Been to a Ruined Wedding. What happened? Story 6 will push your buttons. See you on that video.